Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to talk about sort of a random topic that's been brought up, and it's one that I've weighed in on in several different places, and that's how you end up sharing your profits with everyone that's involved in missions, and what the percentages end up being on that payout. Now, I'm sure there's going to end up being something in the game that's going to help to kind of make this easier, or at least I would hope there's going to be that, but there's at least a few different ways to think about how this might end up working. So let's go ahead and just theory craft a few different situations to really kind of use and walk through how I think these payouts should work. But in all of these situations, we're going to make one very important assumption, and that's going to be that everyone involved is friends, or at least friendly, and you're not out to really screw anybody. Because without that, it would be really easy to say that I organized this mission so I get 90% and the rest of you can fight over the scraps. One other thing that we need to address are a couple of terms, and cost is the amount of funds that you've expended to make this mission happen. Revenue is the total that you actually earn for completing your mission, and profit is your take-home amount, basically revenue minus cost. Now that's pretty simplified for you economics folks out there, but that should help at least for those of you that are unfamiliar with those terms. So first off, let's just start with a very common and probably easy mission, and that's going to be transporting goods from point A to point B. And in this situation, let's say that you have one whole bee carrying the cargo and 3 escort fighters. Now once this mission is completed, your cargo hauler is handing off the goods and your group has earned the revenue. But it's important to realize what cost you took on to make that actually happen. Now if this was an independently crafted mission, you had to actually purchase the goods to carry them out for sale. So the goods come with a cost. Now, in all likelihood, that cost was taken on by the whole bee pilot, though it is possible that everyone involved chipped in. Now, that's possible, but it's not the easiest way to make it happen unless the whole pilot was just unable to afford everything. Either way, let's just go ahead and assume that the whole pilot took on that cost. Now, the first consideration you have to take is repaying the cost taken on by purchasing the cargo. The second cost is fuel, and that's a cost that's taken on by everybody that's involved, including the escorts, and it's something that's going to need to be taken out of the revenue as well. Now, there could be additional costs for landing, but we'll go ahead and just lump that into the fuel cost for just simplicity today. And another cost could end up being damage. Space is a dangerous place, and there's going to be missions that result in your ships taking damage. Now, if you're operating fairly, you should be taking repair cost into consideration when paying out for services. That being said, you really need to factor in why the damage took place. If someone went AFK and ended up clipping off their wing by flying into an asteroid, I would be less inclined to pay out for that if I was the whole pilot, as opposed to someone who took damage defending against a piracy raid, because in that latter situation, they took damage to ensure that the success of the mission was completed. It was a successful mission. And that is a cost that I think should be addressed in the payouts. And then finally, you have miscellaneous costs, and those could be purchasing safe passage through a system in the face of overwhelming forces, or it could be something as random as deciding to pay out for information on different paths you can take. Now, I would say that those are unlikely, but they could happen. So let's go ahead and just summarize these a little bit and try and get to a profit. You get to point B, all 3 ships land, and the whole B ends up selling their cargo, and the revenue is going to be 1 million UEC. Now, that's a random number, but it's an easy one to work with. Let's say that the whole B pilot paid 700,000 in credits for the cargo. So that gets repaid immediately to them, leaving you with a total of 300,000 credits. The whole B fuel cost ends up being 20,000 UEC, and all 3 fighters used 15,000 credits of fuel, or 5,000 apiece, meaning that you need to pay those out, taking your total revenue to 265,000 credits. Now, if there's no extra cost from damage or anything else, that's your total profit, and deciding how to pay that out is where things start to get a little bit tricky. Some people may feel that whoever organized all of this should be the one that's taking home the majority of the profits, and in all likelihood, that would probably be the whole pilot in this scenario. With 4 parties involved here, perhaps the whole takes 40% of the profits, leaving 60% for the 3 fighters to end up splitting. So here, we would be looking at 106,000 credits profit for the whole, and 50,000 or 53,000 for each fighter. Now, I think in an organization this becomes easier, as you could probably just run these consistently and set the precedent that everybody ends up taking equal payouts, meaning that everyone splits the 265,000 and everyone takes home around 66,000 credits. It's much more complicated with random players that you don't know, and chances are you're going to end up needing to negotiate those payout percentages prior to starting the mission. But how do those look? Does the organizer need more earnings? Does the cargo pilot deserve more since they took on the most risk by purchasing the cargo, thus they have the most to lose? Do the fighters take on more risk as they are the ones that are most likely to end up in combat and sustain damage? And like those types of things are hard to really kind of factor in, and they're hard questions to answer. But I think the cargo person does take on the most risk, and them taking a larger cut is fair if, and probably only if, there's a guarantee to the escorts that their damage would be repaired if it took place, or potentially at least insurance replacement cost. This is the type of kind of on-the-fly types of things that citizens are going to really have to take into consideration, and is something that I think is going to make being in an organization a much desired thing. Life gets easier when you're all working together. And I think what we're most likely going to end up seeing in-game is probably flat contracts for escort services. You know, things like, hey, I'm running cargo from Sol to Terra, and I need some protection. I'll give you 30,000 UEC if I make it safe. That type of contract is going to help keep it simple. Then the escort pilot needs to take into consideration how far they have to go, how dangerous the trip may be, and if that risk is worth the reward. That's what it really comes down to, risk versus reward. And some people are going to pay handsomely, and others are going to be stingy, and that could very easily be the difference in reputations in-game, successful runs, and overall profits. There are going to be a ton of factors to consider, and on larger ships, things get even more hairy. You know, things like, I need to crew my guns. What percentage or price am I willing to offer? I need someone to operate my mining laser. What is the cost to make that happen? I need some Marines to help me storm this station. Is that a fair cost, or is it too expensive to complete the mission? Is it worth the reward I'm going to get in return? Ultimately, I think there's going to be people that will do any job, or if there's not people, NPCs, but there is going to be a lot of negotiation associated with making those types of things happen. So I would love to know how you guys think this is all going to work in the persistent universe. You know, what do you think is more attractive, a flat price contract or a percentage of overall profits? If it's a percentage of overall profits, are you willing to take on the risk that you may not complete that mission and get paid? How are you going to be offering up your services to try and hire people to help you out? I'd like to kind of see an open discussion about this in the comments, because I think it's interesting, exciting, confusing, and is a really in-depth topic to try and flesh out, and is one that I see kind of popping up, you know, reoccurring in different locations. So, you know, let's get to it, and I'll try and keep an eye on it and respond to as much as I can, but I would love your thoughts. So that's going to be it for this video. Stay tuned for a whole lot more content. If you need me to kind of flesh this out a little bit more for you, or maybe after this one we'll throw up other different situations to work through, we can. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.